All right, you guys. So today's guest I am having on because we did an IG live. Maybe some of you were tuning in, and the saddest thing happened. My freaking phone overheated and had that big temperature warning, and I lost the whole thing. So while I was laying in fetal position shortly thereafter, I realized that this is actually a beautiful gift and opportunity to really take the amazing dialogue that we had that day and really focus in even more, because we went, I think, close to almost an hour. It was perfect. It opened up the conversation. We went so many awesome places, and now we're back for round two. I have Kristel here with me, and just to kind of give you another, so I'm going to give the intro now. I usually do the intro before, but I'm going to go ahead and intro you, Kristel. I found Kristel through one of my soul sisters, Julie Serot. Heard her speaking on Julie's platform, was absolutely blown away by her message, by her delivery, by her power, her grace, especially speaking about what's happening right now across America. And so I knew right then and there I had to have her come on. She first came on my IG Live. Now she's here on my podcast. And Kristel is actually a love and relationship coach. She supports women who are dating professional athletes, and she is incredible at what she does. She helps women thrive in their relationships. And she herself is married to Jason David, who is a vet Super Bowl champion and NFL player. And she is a mother of 5 beautiful little girls. And so I'm super excited to have you on. Thank you so much for your generosity of coming on and doing it again in round two with me. I so appreciate you for being on today, Kristel.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Ashley. And I would do it again and again. I feel like I saw this meme the other day that said, last week wasn't just a BLM, a Black Lives Matter Spirit Week. It was just the start of something that we get to continue. So, I think it's great that we get to just have another conversation. And that was how I took what happened to us last week of like, great, we get to do it again and again and again. And so no problem. Thank you for using your voice, using your platform to have this conversation. Because I really do think that it's up to you and people who have your platform, the non-Black people with a voice is really who's going to make a difference right now. So you are in the forefront, and I really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you. And that really leads where I'd love to just jump in, because since when I talked to Julie, and then since you and I talked, every day I'm diving into researching what's happening, and I shared this on our live, and I want to start here for the listeners to hopefully set an intention of a safe space, that this is not a conversation of my opinion against yours. It's not a conversation of like Republican versus Democrat. It's not a, do you like Trump? Do you not like Trump? It's so much bigger. It's a human race issue. And so if you're listening, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time to hear this. And I want to open with that, because what I've noticed I've been doing is, in my opinion, if you can take anything, I know people's attention span, so you may get off this podcast halfway through. This is really, if you take anything from today that I want everyone right now to hear from me, and that is educate yourself. Put yourselves in the shoes of the Black community. And I know compassion and empathy is actually one of my biggest challenges as a leader. It's one of the things that I've been learning over the last year. For me personally, I learned where I didn't have it mostly in my marriage and with my kids and whatnot. But because I'm such an alpha female, I'm a Leo, I'm like, I see things and I run, and it's just like I go. Empathy and compassion are things that I often miss. And I think there's something that is so important for everyone to have today, because what I'm experiencing as I do my research and as I listen and as I read, I'm experiencing that so many people are not necessarily blatantly racist. And so what's happening from my experience is so many people who have a front row seat in line, or a front spot in being a part of this change that gets to happen, they're not in their power. They're not aware that they have a role to play right now because they don't feel like they're a part of the problem. And so I think that's something that I'm noticing, that, you know, it's people not realizing that they have to be a part of this solution because they don't feel like they were racist. And then going deeper on that, I'm realizing they don't think they're racist because, number one, the system has taught you, and it's taught me, it's taught all of us for a very long time. Since slavery, it's just been repeated. If you haven't watched the documentary 13th, I highly recommend it, because what I learned from watching that, and then from reading, and then like paying attention to people's behavior right now, is that when slavery was abolished, it just got rewritten through a different law. And I'm another thing I want to really put on the table here is I'm very vulnerable about not being a history buff. I can't tell you the year that, like,
Girl,
I'm really...
me too.
Okay, so I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the year that things were, you know, changed and all the laws and like the Jim Crow, but I'm learning. I will tell you that one thing I have found in my growth as a human is that there's a difference between saying, oh, I don't know anything about history, and then just stopping there and being like, I didn't know up until now, but I'm willing to learn. And so that's what I'm inviting people to do, is instead of like being just like me, where it's like, oh no, I don't pay attention to history, I'm not racist, I'm going to just keep going to the beach and brunching with my friends because I know I'm not racist. I have Black friends. I married a Black man. I dated a Black guy in college. My kids are friends with Black people. Like, whatever your like passive way of feeling like, you know, you're not racist, I promise you, if that's you, you're not only a part of the problem, unfortunately, but you are needed so badly right now to be a part of the solution. So I wanted to just open with that, because really I also think that the problem we have is so deep rooted and systemic, but the solution is so simple. And even though it's not simple, because a lot of laws have to change, that's what I'm learning. So it's not easy, but it's simple. And I was listening to a sermon from Joel Osteen, and what he said was, it wasn't him, it was the guy he was speaking, I think his name was John, and he said in some biblical story that like at the snap of a finger, Jesus changed things, he moved things. And so I just wanted to remember that, like, the power of a miracle can happen with the snap of a fingers. And so I don't believe that the racism can change overnight, because it is so systemic and it's so ingrained. But I do want to say that and presence it, because I think it's easy for us to lose hope. And if anybody's like me, where you didn't know, and then now you're diving in, you're reading the white privilege books, you're listening to all the posts, you're paying attention, you're tuning into podcasts like these, you might be like, well, holy crap, I can't do anything. And an overwhelmed mind will do nothing. It'll check out and it'll run away and it'll isolate and it'll put its head in the sand and it'll say, call me when this is over. And so I just wanted to bring that hope of, this gets to change as simply as you showing up and changing your heart and the way you live in the world, you as in everyone listening, and then it's a ripple effect. So we talked about so much stuff. We really did go into an hour that day.
Yeah, and the thing I want to just really emphasize again is key that Kristel said, which is that all of us have a role in this, whether we're conscious of it or not. So it's a choice of choosing to be conscious of what is my role. And that may take you sitting with it and really actually asking yourself, I did this, what is my role? So all of us do. And I feel that a lot of white people right now are doing what you said, just kind of like, okay, I'm just going to kind of shut up, or I'm just going to kind of curl away. And it's like, no, this is a beautiful opportunity for you actually, because you're going to be able to speak to other people that maybe I can't, that maybe you can't, right? Like people, you may say it in such a way that it lands. So it's an opportunity for you to realize that all lives matter when all lives are on deck, like all hands are on deck. Like that's how you matter right now. Like that's really how you can matter in the situation. And what's going on is like, right now, Black Lives Matter, that's where the focus is. And we get to go there. And I'm excited to talk about that pressure and that focus with you next, because that's where I really want you to dive into that, because that was so beautiful what you said on the IG Live. And the part that I really just want to say is, and really hit home for you listening, if you feel like, I don't know what to do right now, or you're leaving yourself as this kind of exception to what's going on, you're not an exception. Your role matters. And I invite you to really look at that and see how you can show up right now and create a difference in your own way, in a way that's different from mine and different from Kristel's.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That's one thing I just want to really reemphasize. And I'd love for you to talk about that, the focus and, the whole all lives matter versus Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. So I started last time, and I'll pick up here with giving you guys a little bit of background on me, that I am half white, half Black. And then, so I was raised by the white side of my family, my white mom, her siblings, all my babysitters were white. My neighborhood was mostly white, my school. So I grew up in a pretty privileged environment myself. And then I married right after high school, going into college, into my husband being an NFL player. And I bring that up because in conversation over this past week, which it feels like so long, but it's only been like a week and a little over
so
a week.
True.
Yeah. But in this last week, which is also so powerful, actually, just how much your life can transform when you just get present to what's happening around you. But anyways, I realized in a conversation how privileged I actually am, because then you step into NFL privilege, which is one that even a lot of white people don't experience. And I mean, I'm talking weed. I knew if I got a speeding ticket, we could get it written off so easily. I knew that when we go places, we're getting VIP treatment. I didn't wait in lines at clubs or anywhere, concerts, whatever. And so I bring up that privilege because I wanted to share with you, in light of what Ashley is bringing up as far as the role, my role in all of this, I realized was that, and I'm light skinned. So obviously if you can't see me and you just hear me, I have the better end of the stick with the Black experience. So when you bring in all of these privileges, I can relate to white privilege on so many levels, because I too am not racist to my understanding, even though the more I dig into things, I'm like, I'm racist in other ways too. But I also I can't even fathom, especially being raised by white people, I can't even fathom that racism is actually happening. And so again, going back to what I said in the beginning about white people kind of checking out, I don't think people are realizing how severe it is. And so what I want to talk about with the All Lives Matter, where my stance has evolved in the past week, is the very first talk I had on this was when I did it with Julie, which was the interview that you heard, Ashley. And my stance that day was very much so like, yes, we get to talk about Black Lives Matter, but I want to reframe this and let's say all lives matter, in a sense of not dismissing Black lives, but you get to realize how much you matter right now. And so to what Ashley's saying, we all have a role. So for me, I'm realizing my role is to be the bridge between the white privilege who don't get it and the Black people who are in catharsis right now, or who are in outrage and who are so fed up with white people. Like, I'm done trying to explain to you, go read your own book. I'm exhausted trying to explain myself. I don't owe you an apology. So there's a lot of rage in the Black community, and I don't experience that rage. I have way more grace, patience, understanding, and compassion for the white bubble, because I came from it too. I didn't live the reality of walking into a store and fearing that they were looking at me. I never was taught, make sure you have a receipt so that you're not accused of being stolen. I've called the police because I wanted to be safer. I remember my husband being a Black male in Indiana, driving down a highway and getting pulled over, and I, big old pregnant, in hindsight kind of looked like this ghetto girl, because I was like all scruffy, messed up, because I was cleaning out my dorm room in college. And I'm like, what are you pulling him over for? What did he even do? And I'm like pretty much cussing out a white cop. I clearly didn't have fear of the police. I clearly didn't have keep your mouth shut, be respectful. I'm the one that has a pissy attitude when I get pulled over by cops. So I share this to say that it's going to require those of us who don't have the fed up experience of being done with white people, or the extreme white supremacy people who are pretty racist and who have fully bought into this systemic racism. We are the bridge. Those of us who didn't live the rage and those of us who are not being the oppressor are the ones at the forefront right now. We are the ones being called. And so it's being required of us to wake up and stand in our lane. And so to Ashley's point, you may not have a platform. Like I had one person say, well, I don't have followers like you do. I don't use social media. Many of you guys listening might not. And so your role is maybe not to go do a podcast or an Instagram live. Your role might be to just call out your parents when they say something racist when you're going to dinner. It might be to be like, mom, dad, uncle, auntie, cousin, friend, what are you, I heard this podcast, what are you doing right now to get involved? Oh, I'm not getting involved. I'm not racist. Well, I think let's talk about how our vote can change things. The Black lives get to be matter. No, all lives matter. No, blue life, no, but mom or cousin or friend. Have you thought of the fact that they don't matter because can you just watch this movie? Like that might be that actually is your role. That actually is
and that takes courage. Like a lot of courage. Yeah, that's going to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's
and so
what we did right now.
Yeah. And actually, I'm so glad you said that because to be honest, like what I forget, because one of my superpowers is I don't give a crap what people think about me. I don't think, well, they might judge me. They might think I sound crazy. That's I realized, and I didn't realize it till in the last few years, that's one of my superpowers. I realize that's not easy for people. So if you truly believe that all lives matter, then now is the time to stand for all lives to matter, because all lives don't matter until Black lives are mattering. And so to kind of go back in for a second to where I was at when I did Julie's interview, I was taking this more universal. I've actually learned since then, there's this term called spiritual bypassing. So I was taking this like, I'm awakened, let's be leaders, let's choose love, let's have grace and compassion and understanding for one another, and let's all get along. And I was kind of coming from like, everyone matters and you get to, I had a very strong stance on you matter. Like if you don't get that you are important right now, but I was not standing in Black lives are the issue right now as much as I am today. And so what has changed that I really feel is worth bringing up right now is in my research from watching the documentary 13th, reading different things, watching different videos, listening to different dialogues. I was listening to a podcast today that a Black attorney who has been to jail, he grew up in an underprivileged Black community and he made it out. And so his dialogue was phenomenal because you really got to see the whole process. And just listening to him, I'm going to give you guys this example because it really stood out to me. He said, for example, when George Floyd, let's just use because the most recent, when he was brutally murdered, not only did he get murdered by the people who are supposed to protect him, but there was 4 other people or 3 other people, I don't know how many cops total, but there was other cops who are supposed to protect all lives who matter, watching this man go down. If that doesn't tell you that there's a mental, subconscious, systemic dialogue that a certain race doesn't matter as much as another race, that's one point. But he talked about how George Floyd did not get due process, which is basically like, we're going to handcuff you, we're going to take you in, we're going to see did you actually have counterfeit money, blah, blah. So he got killed over alleged $20, right? Now, then he used the example when Sandy Hook took place, when 20 kids were killed, or I think it was 20 kids, but when 20 kids were killed, or when that white supremacist man walked into a church and killed 10 people in a Black church, that man was arrested. He wasn't just shot down. You literally just killed 20 kids. We don't even need to bother with death row right now. Let's just take you out. They took him in and they gave that man due process. So there's clear systemic differences. We have been trained. And if you watch 13th, there's a Black woman in there. I don't know her name, but she talks about how not only has the media and the laws portrayed the Black man to be criminal, barbaric, animalistic, more capable of rape and all these different things. Not only has that depiction been made in our heads, but so for white people to believe, but Black people believe it too. So what I really want you to hear right now, because I'm throwing a lot at you, is that my question to everyone listening and to as many people who can hear this question is, especially if you're white or non-Black, is, are you willing to not be right and be kind? Are you willing to fight for another race because all lives matter? Because the truth is you can very well just continue your life, your legacy, your future generations, and live like Blacks don't matter, because it doesn't really affect you. You've been protected by a system that it does not matter if there's a whole community of Black people being systemically shot and killed by cops, being underprivileged with their education, being underprivileged with their access to home loans, their access to all the equalities that white people have. You can live your life, you can keep going, you can keep passing on your generational success and wealth and not really be bothered. So this is the scary thing. I was talking to a white woman in my DMs from one of my posts, and she's like, so what do we do? I hear you, I'm an ally, I'm here for you guys, what do I do? And I started throwing out, well, it's gonna take white people to step down in positions of power and give it to diverse positions and people of color, Black people. It's gonna take you voting in our favor. It's gonna take you understanding our history, all this stuff. She literally was like, oh, I honestly don't think white people are willing to do that. And that's where I'm calling you forward. Ally does not get to just be, I saw this somewhere this week. Ally is not a noun, it's a verb. You don't get to just say, I'm with you, I'm standing with you, so I'm gonna post, I'm gonna say, what can we do? I'm gonna ask you all the right questions. No, you get to have courage, like Ashley said. You get to have those uncomfortable conversations with your friends. You get to vote differently and educate yourself, because so the biggest thing I want to say to wrap that thought up of why I brought up the Sandy Hook and why I'm showing you the disparities and the differences is because there's even been Black women and Black people who say George Floyd had a criminal record. He not that he deserved to die, but they're almost justifying it like he's one of those low income hoodlum type Black people. There's a lot of Black people. We had a Black president. I saw something that blew me away, that because we had a Black president, there was a lot of white people who subconsciously chose the most opposite of that, just because they were like, whew, that's over, let's get back to regularly scheduled programming of white supremacy. So I thought that was interesting. But bringing all that together, there's even Black people who are saying George Floyd had a record. Like, why are we praising a Black man with a record? Like, he's a criminal, not that he deserved to die, but come on, like, we're safer without his kind on the street. Are you willing to understand that not only are you believing that Black people are majority criminals and all these things because of what you're seeing, but what if Black people are the way they are because since slavery was abolished, they've been put into a system to keep them stuck? Like the just last example to this point, the attorney who was talking today on this issue, he was saying an example is when jails and prisons were privatized, money was involved. So they had to keep the numbers up of people. Well, who did they go after? The Black people. And so they enslaved them. And so it was like a known thing, like you go and you fill these jails. So I'm asking, I'll say it again, are you willing to not be right about what you rightfully are right about, if that makes sense? Like, you rightfully are right that there's criminals, we got to be protected. I think the biggest red flag right now is defund the police. So I get why you feel concerned to have less police out there and all that, but are you willing to see that Black people have not mattered enough to have a just system, and that's why they're turning to crime? That's why their communities are impoverished, and so it's up to you to change that so that they can have equal opportunity.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. Like, that's the root of the problem, is the systemic racism. I'm going to put a resource for you guys in the links, which is an article, or I might link the video on systemic racism, so you can understand what that means. Also, I'm going to put a link to some resources for you guys on what you can do, actions you can take, petitions you can sign, ways that you can matter right now, ways that you can make a difference. So I'm going to put that in there in the show notes for you guys as well. So the point I really want to emphasize is what she said, which was brilliant. Ally is a verb, not a noun. And you're hearing that word being thrown out like crazy right now. Ally, ally, ally. And it's so true. It's like, you guys, if you're not feeling uncomfortable right now, that's a sign that you're not being an ally. Like you're not in the actual doing. You're not taking the uncomfortable action that's required of you right now to make a difference, to make a true change. And so one thing I'll tell you that's super uncomfortable for me, and Kristel said it earlier, super uncomfortable for me to dive into history and to be like, what, like I just watched the 13th as well. I highly recommend. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well for you guys. Is another thing that I think is awesome when it comes to educating yourself. Like there are documentaries right now that are coming out. 13th is a really great one. You know, I'll just say right now, that's not comfortable for me. And I'm doing it because it's necessary right now. So if I ever feel like I'm being comfortable in this whole movement, then I'm not doing my part. I'm not really playing it out the way that I can play it out. So, so I just want to say that. And also I don't know about you, Kristel, but I've never, and I'm going to release shame as I say this. I've never voted. So there's a confession, and you better believe that's about to change. And I'm excited because I literally have had this story. Well, you know, it's so silly now that I think about it. It's like what you said doesn't concern me. Like my vote doesn't matter. Like what's one, you know, and that's what we get to freaking break down right now. That's what gets us here in situations like this in the first place. So we got to hit it at the root. Okay. And, in order to do that, it takes us getting radically uncomfortable. It takes us taking like absolutely courageous actions and being and really, doing our part in being an ally, a true ally. So with that, I just want to again express my gratitude for you, Kristel, coming on here and doing this over again. And it's been cool for me, guys, because even though we had a conversation before, this is actually a new conversation for me because, oh yes, this is what I wanted to say earlier. I want to say this right versus wrong has got to stop. Look at Kristel as an example, just in the time I've known her. Okay. She started somewhere, right? You started somewhere, and then you've evolved because you've taken it upon yourself to educate yourself, to actually like dig in to the root of what's going on. And now every day you're learning more things and you're evolving along the way. So it's not that you were quote unquote wrong before. You know what I'm saying? And that's what's happening right now. There's so much separation happening because of the I'm right, you're wrong, I'm right, you're wrong. It's all about what's true, what's not true, what works and what doesn't work. So, and the only way we can really know that is through the education. Right? Like if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't. And so that's something I really want to say to you right now. If you're listening, right versus wrong, forget about it. It's what's true, what's not true. It's what works and what doesn't work. And I promise you, as you dig in, it will surface and you will see it. It just takes you digging in.
I know we're at time, but if I can just with emphasizing that, because that's why I started with my evolution, because I love what you just said. I am a very self-righteous person, especially because I have a pure heart. I never realized how my righteousness was what almost ruined my marriage. And I talked about that a little in our other interview, but the reason why I bring that up is because it is our righteousness. And that's why I'm trying to give you guys these examples of you're right to feel threatened by Black people, because that's what you've been taught. And that's why I'm saying, like, I have quotes about your being right with that, because it's not right. It's not true and it's not working, but you are right because that's what you've been taught. And that's what I wanted to bring it up. But like, are you willing to just be open and put yourself in our shoes so that, and that's what I had to do when I was talking to my own Black community. I'm like, you guys, you're tearing up things. You're raging on white people. You're shaming them. You're cussing them out. You're giving up on them. That's not working. I wanted to be right about that because I'm so conscious and awakened that I wanted to be right, that love is the only answer and anger isn't it. But you know what I've learned in my evolution? If you go and do your history and your research on the Black experience and you're not angry and outraged and you don't have a form of catharsis, then I love how you're saying, Ashley, if you're not uncomfortable right now, you're not in it the way you're being called to be in it, because we all as humans should be out. And I don't like to use the word should, but there's got to be somewhere inside of us to find it in our hearts to be outraged for other lives, even though they're not our own. And that's what's missing right now, is people can't relate to the struggle. They don't know history. You're not taught the true history in school. So if you're not taking it upon yourself to go learn it, then, you're not seeing it. And I just want to give this example as I wrap my thoughts up that really landed for me. And it came to me when I was like, violence is not the answer. Today on that podcast, the guy, his name's Antonio, he was like, the Boston Tea Party, they knew that ruining material things that brought money to the country would be the only way to get the attention. He's like, and that's what people are doing right now. They realize that people are going to be more outraged to see Louis Vuitton stores go in flames and their local businesses go up and be looted and destroyed than they are a Black man being killed in front of people. And I was just like, wow. And that just tells you how desensitized how desensitized we are to thinking that this is just how Black people are supposed to be treated, that you don't even connect that they're humans. And so if you are someone who's like, all lives matter, I just want to end my thoughts, my cry, my call to action in those memes that are going around, the scenarios of when someone says, my grandma died, that's not the time that you say, well, my grandpa died. When someone says that, my finger hurts, you're not saying, well, my toe hurts. It's like, let the Black lives matter right now. We get to have all hands on deck for the Black lives right now. We're not taking away, and all lives matter really. And this is where I've evolved, because at first I was like, I don't get the big deal. Why are Black people so mad about all lives matter? They do all matter. But this is where we ended last time, where I think we get to end again, is we've got to put pressure around the Black community. If we start to diminish the pressure by saying blue lives matter and all lives matter, then we can't focus that right now we're talking about Black lives. Because the other thing is, we're not saying we're going to blue lives. What about the immigrant people? Their lives matter. We're not talking about them right now. So it's like, really be mindful that Black lives historically have not mattered, and they get to matter. They get to have a place. And I'll end with the example that I was going to say, was when I realized that when soldiers, if you don't understand white privilege, here's a way I've been able to land it. When soldiers go to war for us, we thank them for their service. We say, thank you for literally going and killing other people so that we can have our rights and our freedom and our safety. But we don't say war is not the answer, even though war is not the answer. I hope that our world is raising the frequency that we can see there's enough abundance for everyone to win, every race, every nation. But we're not there yet. But we don't go to that level when soldiers are literally killing for our freedom. We say, thank you for protecting my privilege. But when it comes to a Black life, then we get outraged and we're like, oh my gosh, violence is not the answer. I'm sorry for George Floyd, but why are you ruining stores? That's not the answer. Violence is not the answer. And it's like, no, war is not the answer either, but no one's harping that analogy when your freedom and your life is literally what's at the cost of our soldiers killing human beings. And unfortunately, war doesn't have to happen either. And so I love the hope that I want to leave us on. If we can heal our hearts to include the Black man and woman in the community, then we will heal the world. We will start to see the world that way. We will raise our frequencies so much that we'll see nations don't have to lose for another one to win. We'll start to see a better world, not just community, not just home. And so my cry to everyone is to just realize that Black lives have not matter, and they do. Black lives matter, and that's the only thing that we get to put pressure and focus on right now, so that we can have equality and justice for a whole race that hasn't had it.
What we focus on expands. We know this, guys. And this is what needs expansion right now. Like, this is what we need to focus on right now. And I mean, I love that. And I'm happy that you ended with that, the pressure, the focus, and how important that is. There's lots of room for distraction, lots of room. So stay focused, stay present, get uncomfortable, radically uncomfortable, step into your courage like you never have before. This is a major opportunity for all of us to get to the next level, to grow together. So thank you so much, Kristel, for coming on the show. And you guys, if you don't already follow Kristel, give her a follow. Any part of this, if it resonated with you, as always, screenshot, share it on your stories, tag us. We'd love to hear from you. Let's continue this dialogue. Seriously, let's continue these conscious conversations. It's what's needed right now. So I encourage you to do so and use your voice and create change with us. So thank you, Kristel. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you all for listening and for sharing and taking action.